June 4th, 1942, 06:15 a.m., somewhere northeast of Midway Atoll. The ocean stretches flat and merciless, a mirror of pale gray under a sun that refuses to warm the men on the flight deck of the USS Enterprise. The smell of aviation fuel mixes with sweat and sea salt. Steel plates groan under the weight of fully armed SBD Dauntless dive bombers, their wings glinting in the early light. Every sailor knows the Japanese carriers are out there just beyond the horizon, invisible but deadly commander. Wade McCluskey, eyes narrowed behind his goggles, watches the horizon like a hawk. The voice over the intercom crackles with updates from scouting planes, reports of enemy formations of carriers, bristling with aircraft of planes already in the air. He knows what must happen. The Enterprise must strike first, strike hard, strike true. The men on deck move with the tense choreography, ropes tightening, wings folding, engines roaring. You can almost hear the collective heartbeat of the ship machines. Hum boots slap against steel, and the scent of cordite hangs in the air. Pilots climb into cockpits checking instruments, fingers tight around throttles. The tension is so thick it feels like it could be sliced with a knife, then a distant shudder. A Japanese Zero streaks across the sky, barely a dot at first. Anti-aircraft guns open fire, the bark of machine guns snapping like whips. The dauntless pilots adjust their course, adrenaline surging. Somewhere below deck, the gunners whisper prayers, some for luck, some for revenge. You can almost feel it, the anticipation before chaos, the fragile stillness that comes before a storm of fire minutes later. The first wave of dive bombers lifts off a flurry of metal and smoke. They arc toward the enemy carriers, their bombs heavy in the racks, engines screaming. From the Enterprise's deck, the scene is a ballet of destruction in slow motion. You can see the tension etched on every face, the trembling hands gripping control sticks, the quiet prayers whispered under breath, and then the horizon lights up, torpedoes splash. Anti-aircraft fire erupts in columns of smoke and flame. The Kido Butai, pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, is caught in a storm it cannot control. But below the chaos, Enterprise remains eerily untouched. Not a single bomb strikes the deck, not a shell cracks her hull. You almost hold your breath in disbelief somewhere. Amid the chaos, a single Japanese Zero dives. Strafing the flight deck, a bullet pierces the aft elevator. One. That's all, one tiny hole that will later become the stuff of legend. The men hardly notice it in the moment. They are too focused on keeping planes in the air, keeping pilots alive, keeping the Enterprise moving. And yet, even as the smoke clears over the enemy carriers, as the fires rage on their decks, and the mighty Akagi and Kaga begin to sink, the Enterprise sails on untouched almost. Impossibly lucky. How could a ship take part in one of the most decisive naval battles in history and emerge nearly unscathed? The answer is more than skill, it's luck, timing, and perhaps something the men call the spirit of the Big E, but luck alone doesn't tell the whole story. Beneath the deck, behind the steel bulkheads, the crew will soon uncover something that defies reason, a revelation that will cement the Enterprise's legend. In Navy lore, 06:30 a.m. The sky above the North Pacific burns with sunlight and smoke, and from the bridge, Commander McCluskey watches the dauntless dive bombers streak toward the Kido Butai. They fall like falcons, wings trembling, dive brakes deployed. You can almost feel the trembling of the Enterprise beneath your feet, as if the ship itself leans forward, urging the planes on. The first bombs hit. The Akagi erupts in a plume of black smoke and fire that rises higher than any sailor could imagine. Decks twist under explosions. Planes still on board are hurled into the sky like rag dolls. The Kaga shudders as steel buckles and flames lick her hull. The Soryu and Hiryu try to maneuver, launching their own aircraft in frantic counterattacks, but it's too late. The air is filled with the sound of engine screams and the deafening roar of detonations. On the Enterprise's flight deck, men duck and tighten straps, gripping anything that might stop them from sliding across the slick steel. Pilots scream over the intercom as their dive bombers plunge into the enemy. Each release of a bomb is a prayer, each explosion a grim confirmation that the tide of the war is turning. You can almost smell the smoke, the charred fuel, the fear and adrenaline blending into a single electric haze. And yet, Amidst the chaos, the Enterprise moves with uncanny precision. Anti-aircraft gunners fire at Zeros that dare approach, tracer rounds slicing through the haze. A bomb from a near-miss splashes yards away, rocking the deck, sending water over the men. Scrambling for cover, one pilot looks back from his cockpit and sees flames consuming the Akagi, smoke curling like serpents into the sky, but the Enterprise herself, miracle of steel and luck, remains untouched. Not a shell penetrates her hull, not a bomb strikes her deck, the only tangible evidence of enemy fire, a single, rifle-caliber hole in the aft elevator, courtesy of a strafing Zero that barely grazed her one tiny hole. The men joke about it later. The Japs can't hit a carrier, but they can aim torpedoes, I guess. But in that instant, nobody has time for jokes. Their eyes are on the horizon, on the fire, consuming Japan's pride below deck. Damage control teams hold their breath. Hull seams creak under stress. Fuel lines shudder, but no water leaks. No sparks ignite. Every bulkhead stands firm. The Enterprise seems almost alive, almost invincible, as if luck itself courses through her veins. And as the smoke begins to clear, the men realize the scale of what just happened. 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu crippled or sinking hundreds of planes, destroyed thousands of Japanese sailors lost, and the Enterprise? She sails on her decks, scarred only by the faintest whisper of enemy fire. McCluskey exhales, though you can almost feel the weight of the battle pressing down on him. He knows what. The world will call it a decisive strike, a turning point. But the men on the Enterprise know something else. Something whispered below decks in the quiet moments when adrenaline fades. The Big E survived what should have been impossible. A single bullet hole. That is all, and yet, even as the first smoke plumes vanish on the horizon, another storm waits. The Japanese will not surrender. The price of victory is far from paid. For the Enterprise, this is only the beginning of a legend written in steel fire and near-impossible luck. June 7th, 1942, Werdine Werdi OM. Pearl Harbor, Oahu. The Enterprise slips into the harbor like a ghost, her steel hull glinting under the tropical sun. Smoke from distant fires on Midway still clings to the horizon, a reminder of the inferno she helped unleash. Sailors line the rails, faces pale but proud eyes, scanning the water for signs of damage and instinct. No battle can erase. Below decks, a tense quiet has settled over the ship. Damage control teams' hands, calloused and fingers trembling, move from compartment to compartment. They check bulkheads, fuel lines, rivets, and joints. Every inch of the carrier is scrutinized. Every seam is pressed, prodded, inspected. Expectation hangs heavy. Surely a ship that launched hundreds of planes and survived near misses from 4 of Japan's mightiest carriers must bear some hidden scars. And then they find it, a single bullet hole, one tiny rifle caliber, piercing the aft elevator, likely from a strafing Zero. That's all. No torn steel, no jagged holes from near misses, no scorched decks beyond the usual burn marks from aircraft exhaust. Just a single, almost comical puncture in the vast armor of the Enterprise. The men stare, some in disbelief, some in awe. Lieutenant Commander Morton Fresh, from supervising the inspection, chuckles under his breath. Well, he mutters, the Japs can aim a torpedo, but apparently they skipped marksmanship school for machine guns. Every sailor aboard feels it, this impossible luck. Rumors had already begun swirling across. The fleet whispers of a ship that could walk through fire and emerge almost unscathed. But now, with proof in hand, the myth takes root. The Big E is no longer just a carrier. She is a legend, a talisman of hope and resilience for a Navy still reeling. From Pearl Harbor and wary of the next strike, in the mess halls sailors swap stories, embellishing the tale. One claims a bomb glanced off the starboard catwalk. Another swears a Zero's wingtip scraped the funnel. Every anecdote grows, feeding the sea. Aura of invincibility, but beneath the humor and bravado, there is a deeper realization the Enterprise has survived what few thought possible, and her luck may define the Pacific War itself. Even the captain, George D. Murray, allows himself a rare, small smile. He knows that luck is only part of the story. Discipline of his crew, the coordination of his air wings, and the precision of his command all contributed. But as the Enterprise floats in the calm waters of Pearl Harbor, the men can't help but feel that fate somehow has chosen her, yet as repairs begin and planes are refueled, another tension lingers in the air. The Japanese fleet may have been decimated at Midway, but the war is far from over. The Enterprise will be called to fight again in waters even more dangerous, against enemies even more desperate, and the question hangs over every sailor: how long can luck hold? June 1940, 2 months after Midway. The Pacific is a theater of endless blue, pierced by fire smoke and the roar of engines. The Enterprise sails again, her decks polished aircraft armed and crew restless with anticipation. Word of her miraculous survival spreads through the fleet like wildfire. Sailors from other carriers whisper in mess halls, "One bullet hole, that's all she took at Midway. Can you believe it?" Some shake their heads, others cross themselves. Luck or legend, it doesn't matter. They all sense the same thing: the Big E is untouchable. In the air, pilots climb into Corsairs and Dauntlesses with the confidence of men who know the ship below them has defied fate before. On-deck sailors handle bombs and fuel lines with practiced precision, their movements fluid, almost ritualistic. Every man aboard feels a quiet pride, a protective instinct. They are the guardians of something extraordinary, something that seems to transcend normal rules of war, and yet every engagement tests the legend. At the Eastern Solomons, at the Coral Sea, at Santa Cruz 20, major battles, and all the Enterprise emerges battered, but whole. Near misses that would cripple other ships glance harmlessly off her hull. Torpedo planes, kamikaze attacks, storms that toss her deck like a bathtub toy all fail to break her. She becomes a symbol not just of American naval might, but of improbable resilience. The men aboard speak of it in hushed tones. Some claim they see her respond almost instinctively. Steel, groaning guns, tracking engines, roaring in perfect rhythm. Others swear she carries the ghosts of Midway with her spirits that ward off destruction. Commanders write reports. Analysts chart the statistics. Historians puzzle over the pattern. Yet nothing explains the truth. A single bullet hole at Midway, a scratch on an otherwise flawless record, and the ship keeps sailing. And the legend grows not just for the crew, but for the Navy at large. For a nation battered by early defeats, the Enterprise becomes a talisman. Posters show her cutting through waves, guns blazing, planes lifting off her deck. Letters from sailors' families speak of hope, of faith, of the Big E carrying the fight forward when all else seems uncertain. But even legends carry a shadow. Every sailor knows that luck is fragile, that one miscalculation, one poorly timed torpedo could end the streak. And yet the Enterprise seems untouchable, as if history itself has marked her for something greater. The men joke, they boast, they whisper prayers, but beneath it all is a quiet awe, a recognition that they are aboard something that defies reason. And so the Enterprise sails on through fire and storm, through chaos and destruction. She carries her pilots, her gunners, her mechanics, her dreams. A single bullet hole at Midway, a mark of impossibility, a symbol of survival. And for those who watch her, who serve upon her, she is not just a ship. She is legend incarnate. Yet even as the Big E's fame spreads, a question lingers in the minds of all who sail the Pacific. How long can a ship dodge fate? How long before luck alone runs out? 1942 through 1945. The Pacific is a crucible of fire and steel, and the Enterprise sails at its heart. Every battle tests the crew anew. At Guadalcanal, she weathers torpedo attacks, bombs, and suicide strikes. At the Philippine Sea, she launches waves of fighters that crush the Japanese fleet, and yet, when the smoke clears, when fire and chaos settle into ash and memory, the Big E endures. The single bullet hole from Midway is still a badge of impossible luck, a reminder of how fragile and how resilient a warship can be. Sailors speak of it like a legend, almost a talisman. She's got a guardian spirit. One pilot jokes, running a hand along the elevator deck. Another whispers, "It's Midway all over again. She won't let us down." And in those moments, You can almost feel it. The ship itself seems to respond, hull-flexing engines, humming guns, tracking threats instinctively, as if the steel remembers every near-miss, every flight of fate that has passed her by. The psychological impact is profound. For the men aboard, confidence is never fragile. It is forged in the knowledge that they have survived the impossible before. Other ships are lost, carriers vanish under fire, but the Enterprise persists. Morale skyrockets, courage hardens, and the Navy takes note. This ship is more than a vessel, it is a symbol. Commanders study her performance, historians write of her resilience, and the Japanese take note too. A carrier that strikes, without fear, that survives without explanation. What force guides her? Was it skill luck or some ineffable combination neither side can define? The Enterprise becomes a pivot of strategy, a morale weapon, as potent as her guns, yet beneath the legend. Reality remains. The Pacific War is unrelenting. Storms rage, bombs fall, and planes crash. Every sailor knows that luck cannot last forever. The tension is always present. The question, never answered, how long before fate tests the Enterprise again? How long can a single bullet hole symbolize survival against the unyielding tide of war? And as the Enterprise sails into another sunrise deck, bristling with aircraft, the men aboard feel it, the mix of pride, fear, and awe that has followed them since. Midway, they know they are part of something extraordinary, something that will be remembered long after the war ends. A single ship carrying history, carrying hope, carrying legends in her steel and hearts alike. One bullet hole, 4 Japanese carriers. Sunk countless lives, saved 20. Major battles, survived luck, skill, fate, call it what you will. The Enterprise is proof that sometimes in the crucible of war legends are made not from fire and steel alone, but from the impossible.